Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, look, I'm going to be honest with you right out of the gate. We are walking into a minefield,
A theological minefield.
a cultural one, mostly. We're tackling a subject that, for most people, myself included, is basically the scary basement of the Bible. You know, you go down there, the lights are flickering, and it's just dragons, blood moons, and doom.
Yeah.
We are opening up the book of Revelation.
It is definitely the horror movie section of the library for a lot of readers.
Totally.
It's the one book that tends to get left on the shelf or, used to scare teenagers at youth camp.
Exactly. I mean, think about the cultural baggage here. When we say Revelation or Apocalypse, what comes to mind? We've been trained by Hollywood and sci-fi novels to look for very specific things. We're looking for helicopters, we're looking for barcodes on foreheads, we're looking for the Antichrist. It's a disaster script.
It is the cultural default, for sure. We treat it like a code book for the end of the world, a timeline of destruction.
But we have a stack of research today, specifically focusing on a source titled The Unveiled Christ, Fulfillment of the New Covenant. That claims we have been reading the map upside down. And I don't mean slightly off-center, I mean completely inverted.
It is a bold premise, a very bold premise.
What if I told you that, according to this research, Revelation isn't about fear, and it's not even really about a delay or waiting for things to get bad?
The argument here is that the book is actually about clarity and immediacy.
That is the roadmap for today. We are going to unpack this idea that the new covenant isn't just a phrase we say at communion, but a lens to see a finished work. So give us the lay of the land here. If we aren't looking for the end of the world, what are we looking at?
Well, we are shifting the timeline. That is the mission today. The source material argues that instead of scanning the horizon for a distant future event, some cataclysmic finale, we should be looking backward.
Backward.
Backward to what happened at the cross, and then inward to what is happening now.
So less left behind and more, I don't know, wake up.
In a sense, yeah. The goal is to unpack how this source connects the Old Testament prophecy, the Gospels, and Revelation into a single, unified story.
Okay.
And the headline of that story is union, not distance.
I have to admit, reading through the notes, that was the biggest aha moment for me. The idea that this confusing, psychedelic book could actually be a book of fullness. Like, it's not a puzzle to solve, it's a picture to look at.
Precisely. And to really get there, we have to do some specific textual analysis. We need to look at how the source defines the new covenant and, crucially, the identity of Jesus. Because if you get the main character wrong, you get the whole story wrong.
Oh, okay, let's get into the text itself then.
Ugh.
The source highlights the very beginning of the book, Revelation chapter 1. And it points out some phrasing that, frankly, usually makes people nervous.
It starts with the title itself.
Right. The revelation of Jesus Christ.
In Greek, that word is apocalypsis. Now, in English, apocalypse means disaster. It means the end, the collapse of civilization.
Zombies, wastelands, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Exactly. But the source points out that the Greek concept is simply an unveiling.
Like pulling a curtain back.
Yes. Think of the unveiling of a statue. It's not about destruction. It's about revealing something that is already there but was hidden. The source emphasizes that Revelation 1 opens with clarity, not mystery. It is the unveiling of Jesus.
So it's not hiding Jesus behind codes, it's showing him.
It's showing him in his fullness.
Right.
The source argues it is presenting Jesus as the fulfillment of all prophets.
Okay, but here is where I get stuck, and I think a lot of listeners get stuck. The text mentions specific phrases that seem to, contradict reality. Phrases like, shortly come to pass, and the time is at hand.
He cometh with clouds.
Right. Now pause there. If I tell my kids, we are leaving shortly, and we are still sitting there 2,000 years later, I'm a liar. I'm not winning Father of the Year.
No, you are not. Definitely not.
So how does the source reconcile this? Because to the modern reader, shortly, clearly didn't happen. The world is still spinning. We're still paying taxes.
And this is where the mental gymnastics usually start. People say, well, a day is like 1,000 years to God. They try to stretch the word soon to mean eventually.
But this source rejects that completely.
Completely. The source argues that we are misinterpreting what was coming. If you think he cometh means the end of the physical planet, then yes, it's late, very late.
Right.
But the source argues these phrases anchor the reader in the finished work of the cross. It asserts the kingdom has already come.
Wait, so when it says the time is at hand, it means it was at hand then. for the people reading it in the first century?
It means it is grounded in the now. The argument is that these aren't predictions of a far-off future. They are statements of a current reality established by the cross.
The current reality.
Yes, Jesus fulfilled the law, satisfied judgment, and inaugurated the new covenant. It's done.
That changes the vibe of the whole book. If it's about a finished work, then we aren't waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. The source calls it divine immediacy. It's not a letter of delay. It's not saying, hang in there, eventually Jesus will show up. It's saying, he is here.
Well, let's talk about that coming, though, because the text mentions he cometh with clouds.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty external to me. That sounds like a sky-splitting event.
I know.
The source has a very specific take on this, doesn't it?
It does, and this is where it challenges the sci-fi narrative again. The source views this return not as a coming from afar, like a superhero flying down from the sky, but a revealing from within.
A revealing from within. That sounds mystical.
It is deeply spiritual. The source argues it is by the Spirit. The glory of God is being made manifest, but where? Through his body, the church.
That is a heavy concept.
Yeah.
So the second coming, in this view, isn't just an event on CNN. It's the Spirit of Christ bursting forth through us.
That is the implication. The text says, the glory is already breaking forth through the body, the church awakened and reigning. It's about the veil being torn not just in the temple, but in us. The source says once you see it, you can start walking in it.
So it's active. It's participatory. It's not just sitting on a roof waiting for a beam of light.
It is the opposite of passive waiting. It's active realization.
Okay, so if Revelation is the unveiling and the main event is this union, we need to define the terms because New Covenant is one of those church words we hear all the time. The source spends a lot of time defining it, but it starts by saying what it isn't.
Which is very helpful here, defining by negation. The source explicitly states the new covenant is not a new set of religious rules.
Which is a relief, because I think a lot of us grew up thinking the New Testament was just the Old Testament with a nicer boss.
Exactly. Moral upgrade program. That's the phrase the source uses.
Yes. Old Covenant 2.0,
Yeah.
now with fewer sacrifices but way more guilt.
Right. We often treat Christianity like that. Just try harder than the guys in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
But the source argues that humanity's problem, all the way back to Genesis, wasn't a lack of information.
Okay.
It wasn't that we didn't have enough rules.
What was the problem then?
Separation from life.
Separation.
The law exposed that separation. It showed the gap. It was like an X-ray machine. It could show you the broken bone, but it couldn't set it. It couldn't heal the divide.
So if the New Covenant isn't just better rules or a better X-ray machine, what is it?
It is defined as union, not distance. The prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they didn't promise improved obedience. They promised transformed hearts. I will take out the stony heart and give you a heart of flesh.
And here is the insight from the source that I found really compelling. The negotiation aspect, or rather the lack of it.
Yes. The source phrases this beautifully. Jesus didn't come to negotiate better terms between God and man.
I love that image because I think we picture Jesus as a defense attorney. Like God is the angry judge and Jesus is standing there saying, Your Honor, I know he messed up, but can we get the sentence reduced, maybe community service?
Right, trying to strike a plea bargain. But the source says no, he isn't mediating a deal. He came to fulfill the covenant from both sides as God in the flesh.
Unpack that for me. From both sides. That sounds physically impossible.
Well, think about what a covenant is. It's an agreement between two parties. Usually both sides have to keep their end of the bargain. If you do this, I will do that.
Right.
But humanity kept breaking it over and over.
We were the unreliable partner.
Completely. So God does something radical. He becomes a man. Jesus represents humanity perfectly, fulfilling the human side of the covenant, absolute obedience, righteousness. But he is also God, fulfilling the divine side, justice, mercy.
So the handshake happens inside of him.
Yes. At the cross, judgment and mercy met. Not in a future courtroom, but in a person.
That's a game changer. Because if the deal is done in him, and we are in him,
Then the mediation is over. The source is very clear on this. Life is no longer mediated through temples, sacrifices, or systems. The resurrection announcement is that forgiveness is finished.
finished. That's a big word.
It means God is no longer counting sins. The source frames this as the end of humanity needing to climb upward. That's the striving part. We are so used to the idea of climbing the mountain to get to God. But this is saying God came down the mountain, picked us up, and the climb is over.
The work is finished. Now the call is to awaken to that reality.
But there's a snag. Historically, there was a literal barrier. a wall. And the source takes us to Ephesians 2 to look at that. This part was fascinating to me because I think I've always misread who the two are in this passage.
It is a very, very common misunderstanding. Ephesians talks about making the two into one new man. We often think this means, I don't know, carnal Christians and spiritual Christians, or maybe believers and non-believers.
Right, or the A team and the B team in the church.
But the source clarifies this based on the context of the first century. The two are specifically Jews, covenant Israel, and Gentiles, the nations.
The near and the far.
Exactly. Israel was described as near. Why? Because they had the covenants, they had the temple, they had the law, they had the history.
They're the access codes, so to speak.
In a sense, yes. And the Gentiles, which is most of us listening, were far away. They were strangers to the promise. They had no hope, according to the text.
And when the source talks about the dividing wall of hostility, it's not just being poetic about racism or, bad vibes, is it?
No, and this is where the history brings it to life. In the temple in Jerusalem, there was a literal barrier called the soreg.
The soreg.
It was a chest-high stone balustrade that separated the court of the Gentiles from the inner courts where the Jews could worship.
So you could see where you wanted to go, but you couldn't get there.
And it wasn't just a polite do not enter sign. Archaeologists have actually found the warning inscriptions from that wall. They are terrifying.
What do they say?
They basically say, no foreigner is to enter within the balustrade. Whoever is caught will have himself to blame for his subsequent death.
Subsequent death.
Yeah.
That is intense.
It was the ultimate keep-out sign. It defined the entire religious worldview. There are those who were in the insiders, the ones with the history, and those who were out. And the penalty for crossing that line was execution.
So when Paul writes in Ephesians that Jesus broke down the middle wall of partition, he isn't just saying, let's all get along. He is saying that the entire system of in versus out has been demolished.
He bulldozed the fence. The source says Christ destroyed this wall in his flesh. By fulfilling the law, he rendered it obsolete as a boundary marker. The law lost its authority to divide.
But here's the critical distinction the source makes, and I want to make sure I get this right, because I always assumed that Jesus knocked the wall down so that Gentiles could basically become Jews. Like, hey, great news, you guys can join the club now.
That is the common assumption, that it's about expansion of the existing club. But the source argues he did something far more radical. He didn't just reconcile Gentiles to Judaism. He ended both identities as covenant categories.
He ended them. So it's not about becoming a spiritual Jew.
No, he created one new humanity. It's not Jewish plus Gentile. It is Christ-centered. It's a new species.
That's wild. So in this view, being Jew or Gentile doesn't matter for access to God anymore.
Exactly. Access to the Father is no longer through lineage, who your parents were, or what rules you keep. It is through union with Christ. The source says the two bodies are Old Covenant Israel and excluded humanity, and the one body is Christ himself.
Shared by all who live by faith.
By participation in his finished work.
So we've got the veil torn in Revelation. We've got the wall down in Ephesians. Now I want to zoom out, because the source makes this incredible claim that this wasn't a plan B. This wasn't God reacting to things going wrong. This was the plan all along.
The 400 to 700 year setup.
Right. We have these prophets, Isaiah, Micah, Malachi, writing centuries before Jesus showed up. And usually when we read the Old Testament, it feels like a collection of random predictions. A verse here about a king, a verse there about a suffering guy.
It's very easy to read it as fragmented. But the source synthesizes this. It argues that God promised one person who would embody 4 specific archetypes. And the brilliant part is seeing how these track from the OT through the Gospels and land in Revelation.
Let's walk through these, because seeing them connect really helps make sense of Revelation. It stops being a random monster movie and starts being a sequel that ties up all the loose ends. The first archetype is the Son.
The Son. In the Old Testament, you have Psalm 2. Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. And Isaiah 9, unto us a son is given.
So the promise is God isn't just sending a messenger, he's sending family.
He's sending his own essence. Then you get to the Gospels. Matthew 3, the baptism of Jesus. The heavens open, and what do we hear?
This is my beloved son.
Identity confirmed. But then look at Revelation. This is where it gets really powerful. Revelation 1.5 calls him the firstborn of the dead.
Firstborn of the dead. That's a strange phrase. What does that actually mean?
It means he is the pioneer. He is the first of a new kind of humanity to emerge from death into eternal life. It cements his sonship not just as a title, but as a biological reality of the new creation. He's not merely a servant, he is the son.
Okay, archetype number 2. And this is a big one for Revelation. The Lamb.
The Lamb. This thread goes all the way back to Genesis 22. Abraham and Isaac on the mountain. Isaac looks around and asks the question that haunts the whole Old Testament. Where is the lamb?
And Abraham says God will provide himself a lamb.
It's prophetic. Then fast forward to John 1 in the Gospels. John the Baptist sees Jesus walking toward him and breaks the silence. Behold, the Lamb of God.
Who takes away the sin of the world.
And then we get to the climax of history in Revelation 5. This is one of the most important scenes in the Bible. John is weeping because no one is worthy to open the scroll of destiny.
Right.
He is told to look for a lion, the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
So he turns around expecting a roaring beast, a conqueror.
What does he see? A lamb as it had been slain.
That is such a subversion. He hears lion, he sees lamb.
That is the paradox of the gospel. Salvation and authority come through the lamb who was slain. The source emphasizes that central to the heavenly vision is the cross. You don't get the crown without the cross.
Which leads us perfectly to the third identity, the king. Because we want the king to be the lion.
We do. We want the military victory. Psalm 110 promises, sit at my right hand. Micah 5 promises a ruler in Israel.
And when Jesus shows up, he talks about the kingdom constantly. But it's different. It's confusing to the disciples.
It is. In John 18, Jesus confirms he is a king, but says, my kingdom is not of this world. He redefines kingship. He washes feet. He serves.
And then Revelation just cranks the volume up to 11.
Revelation 19, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
But, and this is key, does he stop being the lamb to become the king?
No, that is the point. The source notes that his kingship is validated by the resurrection. It's not a political coup. It's a victory over death. He conquers not by killing, but by dying and rising.
Which seems contradictory until we look at the fourth archetype, the suffering servant. This is the one that confuses people who want a generic superhero.
Isaiah 53. He was wounded for our transgressions. The Jews at the time had a hard time reconciling a conquering king with a suffering victim. They wanted one or the other.
In the Gospels, Mark 10, Jesus says he came to give his life a ransom for many. He embraces the suffering.
And does Revelation erase that? Does it Photoshop the scars out?
I would assume so. In heaven, everything is perfect. Right. No more scars.
Revelation 1 says he washed us from our sins in his own blood. And the Lamb in the center of the throne still lives slain. The source points out that victory comes through suffering and obedience. It's not bypassing the cross. The scars are the trophies.
So the synthesis here, what the source is really driving at, is that Revelation doesn't add new roles. It doesn't say, okay, Jesus was nice in the Gospels, but now the gloves are off.
That is the key takeaway. Revelation unveils that Jesus is all of these simultaneously. He is the Son, the Lamb, the King, and the servant all at once.
It's a unified picture.
God did not send fragmented messages. The Old Testament announces him. The Gospels reveal him. The cross completes him. And Revelation just pulls the curtain back so we can see the finished product in all its glory.
So we have this incredible theological picture. The veil is torn, the wall is down, Jesus is the fulfillment of everything. But I could play devil's advocate for a second, or maybe just tired commuter advocate.
The so what question.
Exactly. This is beautiful theology. But for the listener who is stuck in traffic, or dealing with a difficult boss, or just feeling inadequate, how does this change their Tuesday?
This brings us to the application, and this is where it gets really practical. If this theology is true, it changes the believer's identity completely. The source mentions a specific phrase, kings and priests.
Revelation 1.6. He has made us kings and priests.
Notice the tense again. Has he promised to make us kings and priests?
No, it says made us. Past tense. Finished.
To reign now, not someday.
That is a hard pill to swallow sometimes. I don't feel like a king. I feel like a guy who forgot to take the trash out.
And that is exactly why the unveiling is necessary. The source argues that the unveiling of the real king, Jesus, is the defeat of false religion.
How does it define false religion? Because we usually think of other religions, systems out there.
Here it defines it as earthly systems or striving for acceptance.
Striving. That is the word that keeps coming up. I think a lot of us live on a spiritual treadmill. We think if we run fast enough, pray hard enough, God will finally happen to us.
False religion tells you that you are distant, that there is still a wall, that you have to climb the ladder, pay the toll, do the rituals, and maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get a glimpse of God.
It feeds on the gap.
Precisely. But true religion in this text isn't about closing the gap. It is about awakening. It is awakening to the life, righteousness, and intimacy already given.
Already given.
If the wall is truly down, like we discussed in Ephesians, you don't have to climb it. If the veil is truly torn, like we saw in Revelation 1, You don't have to peek around it. You are already in the Holy of Holies.
It's a shift from getting to God to realizing you are with God.
That is the core of the New Covenant union.
It's amazing how this reframes the whole book of Revelation. We started this conversation talking about fear, the scary apocalypse, the code book for doom, the thing that makes people sweat.
And we ended with fullness.
It's a total flip. We went from the old covenant, which was about separation, law, distance, to the new covenant, union, Jesus.
And the bridge was the cross, the finished work.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought here to chew on. The source talks about this concept of awakening versus striving.
It is the crucial application, really.
Think about your own spiritual life. How much of it is based on striving? How much of your mental energy is spent trying to get to a place where God will finally be happy with you or finally be close to you?
Versus awakening to the reality that he has already come, that the shortly come of revelation has happened in the Spirit.
If the source is correct and the work is truly finished and that wall is truly down, then the spiritual life isn't a commute. It's waking up at home.
That is a beautiful way to put it. You aren't commuting to God. You are already there.
It certainly changes how you view the traffic jam. If you are already a king and a priest, reigning in life, maybe the traffic isn't a barrier to your life. Maybe it's just where you happen to be reigning right now.
Or at least the traffic doesn't define you. Your union with Christ does.
Exactly. Well, this has been a massive deep dive, the unveiled Christ. Who knew Revelation could be so encouraging?
It is the gospel of clarity.
We encourage you to look for the unveiled Christ in your own reading. Don't just take our word for it. Open the book. Look for the Lamb. Look for the finished work.
And see what is unveiled.
Thanks for listening. We will catch you on the next deep dive.